The UNSS. Endurance shuddered violently as another Zarathi plasma round scorched its starboard shielding. Warning klaxons wailed through the corridors as Captain Elias Vance gripped the command console, his weathered face illuminated by the flashing crimson alert lights. Across the bridge, Lieutenant Anya Petrov's fingers danced across her tactical display, her sharp green eyes tracking the enemy's movements with predatory focus. "They're boxing us in, Captain," she reported, her Russian-accented voice cutting through the chaos. "Pushing us toward the nebula's gravity well. Our jump drive won't stabilize in these conditions." Elias ran a calloused hand through his graying hair. The Zarathi didn't just destroy their prey, they toyed with them first. He'd seen the aftermath of their attacks, ships drifting in pieces, crews missing limbs, survivors altered. The thought made his stomach clench. "Engineering, give me options," he barked into the comm, his deep voice carrying the weight of command. The response came through a haze of static. "Aye, Capitan, our main thrusters are singing their swan song, but I've got the auxiliary plasma injectors doing the tango on pure spite and baling wire." Javier Rios's cheerful Mexican drawl somehow made their impending doom sound like a minor inconvenience. "We might squeeze out one good burn if we don't mind sacrificing life support to Deck 4. Elias didn't hesitate. "Do it. And Javi, try not to blow us up this time." "No promises, Jefe." The deck plates vibrated as the ship's struggling engines roared to life. Through the viewport, the swirling purple gases of the nebula loomed ominously close. Elias gripped his armrests as another impact rocked the bridge. Somewhere behind him, a console exploded in a shower of sparks. In the medbay, Dr. Priya Kaur worked with mechanical precision, her 4 delicate Velnar hands moving in perfect synchronization as she repaired the damage to her human patient. The flickering emergency lights cast eerie shadows across her angular features and the smooth blue chitin of her exoskeleton. Her vertical pupils narrowed in concentration as she examined the ruptured organ. "Fascinating," she murmured, though her tone suggested the opposite. Commander Tvek, her superior, loomed behind her, his massive carapace nearly brushing the low ceiling. Unlike Priya's slender medical cast frame, Tvek's warrior cast physiology made him an imposing figure even among his own kind. "Report, surgeon," he demanded, his voice like grinding stones. Priya didn't look up from her work. Lacerated spleen, ruptured vasculature, typical human fragility. Their physiology is absurdly inefficient, single-organ redundancy at best. One heart? One liver? Her scalpel paused suddenly. The steady beeping of the bioscanner changed pitch. "That's impossible." The wounded crewman, a young ensign named Daniels, groaned weakly. "That bad, Doc." Priya ignored him, adjusting the scanner with quick, precise movements. "This human has 2 spleens." From the doorway, Anya Petrov let out a low whistle. The lieutenant leaned casually against the frame, her uniform jacket slung over one shoulder, revealing the hastily bandaged plasma burn on her arm. "Told you we come with spare parts," she said, her lips curling in a smug grin. Priya's brow ridges knitted together as she ran a full diagnostic. The results made her exoskeleton flush a deeper shade of blue. "Secondary renal arteries, redundant nerve clusters in the brachial plexus. Even your sinuses have backup drainage pathways." She turned to Tvek, her usually impassive face showing rare astonishment. "This isn't inefficiency. This is deliberate over-engineering." Anya's grin widened. "Call it an evolutionary warranty." Tvek's mandibles clicked in disapproval. "A waste of biological resources. Proper systems require precision, not improvisation." The ship lurched violently, sending medical instruments clattering to the floor. A fresh wave of alarm klaxons sounded as an ensign came skidding into the medbay, his face pale with panic. "Captain's compliments," he gasped, "but we've got Zorathi boarders breaching Deck 3. Priya finished sealing Daniel's abdomen with swift, practiced motions. By all physiological metrics, he shouldn't survive this engagement. Daniel sat up, wincing but determined. He accepted the sidearm Anya tossed him with a shaky hand. Yeah, well, humans specialize in doing things we shouldn't. As the first terrible shrieks of Zorathi hunters echoed through the corridors, Elias's voice boomed over the shipwide comm. "All hands, prepare to repel boarders. And if anyone's got a stupid idea that might actually work," a brief pause. "Now would be the time." Double asterisk, the lights flickered again as the Endurance groaned in protest, her battered hull straining against the nebula's pull. Somewhere in the distance, metal screamed as the Zorathi tore through another bulkhead. Anya checked the charge on her plasma pistol, her grin turning feral. "Let's show these bastards why humans always read the fine print." The Endurance shuddered violently as another explosion rocked its battered hull, the metallic groan of stressed bulkheads echoing through the corridors like a dying beast's final breath. Captain Elias Vance sprinted through the smoke-filled passageway, his pulse pistol humming with barely restrained energy in his grip. Behind him, Lieutenant Anya Petrov moved with lethal grace, her boots silent against the vibrating deck plates, despite the chaos surrounding them. The acrid stench of burning insulation mixed with the coppery tang of blood in the recycled air. "Javi's last signal came from engineering," Anya reported, ducking as a ruptured conduit sprayed molten metal across their path. Her sharp green eyes scanned the damage with calculated precision. "If anyone can get us moving again, it's that crazy bastard." Elias didn't respond. He'd served with Chief Engineer Javier Rios through 3 tours of duty. He knew better than anyone that the man's brilliance was only matched by his complete disregard for safety protocols. They rounded the final corner and skidded to a halt at the entrance to main engineering. The scene before them looked more like a salvage yard than a starship's heart. Smoldering debris littered the deck, casting flickering shadows across the ruined control panels. In the center of the devastation, Javi crouched like some mad prophet of machinery, his dark curls matted with sweat and engine grease, his calloused hands moving in a frenetic dance between half-melted components. The engineer's normally cheerful face was set in grim determination, his lips moving in a steady stream of Spanish curses as he worked. "Status report," Elias barked, stepping over a sparking power conduit. Javi didn't even glance up from his work. "Primary coolant system? Toast. Secondary backup? Fried. Tertiary emergency reserves." He yanked a charred component free with a vicious twist. "Also, completamente muerto." Anya cursed in Russian, slamming her fist against a buckled bulkhead. "So we're dead in the water." "Technicamente, yes," Javi admitted, finally looking up with that infuriating grin that always preceded his most insane ideas. His brown eyes gleamed with manic energy in the emergency lighting. Unless... Elias knew that tone. It was the same one Javi had used before, jury-rigging a quantum drive with nothing but a hydrospanner and sheer stubbornness. "Unless what, Chief?" Javi wiped his grease-streaked face with an equally filthy sleeve, leaving a dark smear across his cheek. "Unless we build ourselves a brand-new coolant system from the scraps these pendejos left us." Commander Tvek's massive carapace nearly brushed the ceiling of the cramped engineering bay as he loomed over the jury-rigged schematics, his mandibles clicking in clear disapproval. The Velnar warrior's exoskeleton darkened with obvious distress as he studied the proposed modifications. "This violates every principle of proper starship engineering," he rumbled, his voice like grinding tectonic plates. Beside him, Dr. Priya Kaur crossed her 4 slender arms, her vertical pupils narrowing as she examined the plan. The human proposal is unconventional, she admitted, the blue chitin of her forehead wrinkling in what might have been concern. Javi rolled his eyes dramatically. Dios mío, you keep saying that like it's a bad thing. He tapped the flickering display, highlighting the ship's secondary conduits with grease-stained fingers. We don't need the main coolant lines if we reroute through these auxiliary veins. Same principle as human blood flow. When an artery gets blocked, the body just finds another path. Tvek's exoskeleton darkened further. Those conduits were never designed to handle such volume. Not under normal circumstances, no, Javi agreed with a wild grin. But if we borrow the medbay's circulatory pump and Priya's entire body stiffened, her exoskeleton flushing a deeper blue. That is a Class 3 medical device. It's calibrated for keeping things alive, Anya interrupted, appearing suddenly at Javi's shoulder. Her grin was all sharp edges and dangerous promises. Right now, that's exactly what this ship needs. We're bleeding out, Doc. Time for a tourniquet. Elias exhaled slowly, weighing the insanity of the plan against the certainty of death if they stayed put. The distant screech of tearing metal reminded him the Zarathi were getting closer. Do it, he ordered. What followed was 23 minutes of barely controlled chaos that would have given any proper engineer a heart attack. Javi worked like a man possessed, his hands moving with impossible speed as he stripped components from damaged systems and forced them into unholy alliances. Anya became his shadow, anticipating his needs before he voiced them, her muscular frame straining as she wrenched apart fused panels with brute strength when delicate tools failed. Even Priya found herself drawn into the madness, her precise Velnar hands adapting medical technology for engineering purposes with grudging efficiency. Only Tvek remained apart, his massive frame radiating disapproval from the periphery. This violates 17 core principles of starship design, he intoned, watching as Javi bypassed another safety protocol. Javi didn't even pause in his work. Yeah, well, welcome to human engineering, Jefe. Principle 1, don't fucking die. The ship shuddered violently as another explosion rocked the hull. Somewhere above them, metal screamed in protest as the Zarathi breached another bulkhead. They're on deck 5 now, Anya reported, her voice tight. 2 levels up. Javi's hands never slowed. Almost. Got it. His fingers danced across the final connection, the makeshift system teetering on the edge of functionality. With a final, savage twist, he completed the circuit. The Endurance groaned like a waking giant as the jury-rigged system flared to life. Lights flickered wildly before stabilizing into a steady glow. The engine's death rattle deepened into a steady, powerful thrum that vibrated through the deck plates. Elias realized he'd been holding his breath only when his lungs began to burn. You did it. Javi wiped sweat and grease from his brow with the back of his hand, leaving a fresh streak across his forehead. Claro que sí. Now let's see if this maravilla holds together longer than a Velnar's patience. On the bridge, the Endurance surged forward as the improvised coolant system fed life back into its engines. Elias gripped the command console as the ship pulled away from the nebula's grasping tendrils, the stars stretching into streaks as they pushed to sublight speeds. Anya whooped, slamming her palm against the tactical console. We're moving! Those Zarathi bastards can eat plasma. Tvek stared at the engineering readouts with undisguised astonishment, his mandible slack. This should not be possible. Priya studied the medical-turned-engineering modifications with reluctant admiration. Yet it is functioning. Barely. Javi's voice crackled over the comm, breathless with triumph and adrenaline. Told you we didn't need your fancy Velnar engineering specs. Just give a human enough duct tape and desperation, and we'll rebuild the whole damn galaxy. Elias allowed himself a small, weary smile. Then the proximity alarm screamed to life, its shrill wail cutting through the momentary celebration. Anya's grin vanished as she read the tactical display. Zorathi cruiser, right on our tail and gaining fast. Elias's smile faded as quickly as it had appeared. They weren't out of this yet. Not by a long shot. The Endurance shuddered violently as another proximity alert blared through its battered corridors. On the bridge's flickering view screen, the Zorathi cruiser loomed larger with each passing second, its jagged hull plates reflecting the distant starlight like the segmented carapace of some monstrous deep space predator. Captain Elias Vance's knuckles whitened around the armrests of his command chair as he watched their pursuer gain steadily, the distance between ships shrinking with terrifying inevitability. "Time to intercept?" Elias barked, his voice rough with fatigue and suppressed adrenaline. Lieutenant Anya Petrov didn't look up from her tactical display, her fingers dancing across the console with practiced precision. 2 minutes, 17 seconds until they enter optimal firing range. Her Russian-accented voice remained steady, but the tension in her shoulders betrayed their dire situation. "Their weapons are charging, Captain. They mean to finish this." Elias exhaled sharply through his nose, the stale, recycled air of the bridge tasting of burnt circuitry and desperation. They were mobile again, thanks to Javi's jury-rigged miracles, but not fast enough. Not with half their systems held together by hope and improvisation. "Options," he demanded, not as a question, but as an order. Anya's hands paused over her console. For a heartbeat, the only sounds were the steady beep of the proximity alert and the labored breathing of the bridge crew. Then her lips curled into that dangerous grin Elias had come to both admire and dread. "They think we're already dead," she said simply. In the medbay, now converted into a makeshift triage center, Dr. Priya Kaur monitored the wounded with clinical efficiency. Her 4 delicate hands moved between patients with practiced grace, adjusting bioscanners and administering precisely measured doses of pain inhibitors. The acrid scent of antiseptic and burnt flesh hung heavy in the air, mixing with the metallic tang of blood from the more seriously injured crew members. Commander Tvek loomed near the doorway, his massive carapace nearly brushing the ceiling. The Velnar warrior's mandibles clicked in quiet agitation as he studied the medical readouts. "Even if we survive this engagement, the Zorathi will continue their pursuit," he rumbled, his voice like grinding stone. "Their boarding parties outnumber our able-bodied crew 5 to 1. A direct confrontation is inadvisable." From his biobed, Chief Engineer Javier Rios let out a pained chuckle, wincing as the movement tugged at the freshly sealed plasma burn running down his left arm. "So we don't fight them, Jefe?" "We lie." His dark eyes glittered with mischief despite his injuries. Priya's brow ridges lifted slightly, a rare show of curiosity breaking through her usual clinical detachment. "Explain," she demanded, her vertical pupils narrowing. It was Anya who answered, appearing suddenly in the medbay doorway, her uniform streaked with soot and her short-cropped hair matted with sweat. "The Zorathi expect efficiency," she said, moving to stand beside Javi's bed. "Perfect systems, clean kills. They'll scan for standard life signs, see our injuries, and assume we're already corpses." She tapped her temple with one grease-stained finger. "But humans, we've got redundant vitals. We keep ticking, even when we should have stopped." Priya's gaze flicked to her primary med scanner, where Ensign Daniels' supposedly fatal wounds still showed faint but steady biosigns. A slow realization dawned across her angular features. "You propose to feign death," she stated, the concept clearly foreign to her logical Velnar mindset. Javi grinned, despite the pain it clearly caused him. "Si, Doctora. And when they drop their guard, we rip their fucking throats out," Anya finished, her grin all sharp edges and violent promise. The plan was insanity. Beautiful, desperate, quintessentially human insanity. Elias watched from the shadows of a ruined corridor as the first Zorathi boarding pod slammed into the Endurance's hull with a deafening screech of metal on metal. The impact reverberated through the deck plates, sending a fresh shower of sparks raining from the already damaged overhead conduits. The boarding hatch hissed open, revealing the nightmare creatures within. The Zorathi emerged in a skittering tide of chitinous limbs and clicking mandibles. Their segmented armor reflected the emergency lighting in dull crimson hues, while their compound eyes gleamed with cold, calculating intelligence. They moved with eerie synchronization, their movements precise and efficient as they fanned out through the corridor, scanning for threats. The humans played their parts to perfection. Anya lay slumped against a ruined console, her breathing slowed to near undetectable levels through sheer force of will. Javi sprawled nearby, one arm dangling dramatically over a sparking control panel, his face artfully smeared with a mixture of engine grease and synthetic blood from the medbay stores. Even Priya had joined the charade, her Velnar physiology deliberately slowed to mimic the death throes of her species. Only Tvek hesitated, his massive frame tense with visible discomfort. "This is dishonorable," he muttered, the words clearly difficult for the proud warrior to voice. Elias kept his voice low, barely more than a breath. "This is survival," he countered, watching as the lead Zorathi scuttled closer to Anya's apparently lifeless form. The creature paused over her, its antennae twitching as it extended a scanning appendage. The bioreader on its wrist chirped once, a flat, toneless sound that clearly indicated no vital signs. The Zorathi made a satisfied clicking noise and turned away, signaling its comrades to advance deeper into the ship. Anya's eyes snapped open. What followed wasn't a battle, it was a slaughter. The humans erupted from their feigned deaths with a violence that stunned even the battle-hardened Tvek. Anya moved like lightning, her monofilament blade flashing as it plunged through the nearest Zorathi's thoracic cavity before the creature could react. Javi, despite his injuries, wrenched a plasma cutter from its mounting and carved through two more attackers with a wild, almost gleeful abandon. Priya fought with surgical precision, her stolen disruptor picking off targets with cold efficiency even as she adapted to the unfamiliar weapon's recoil. Tvek, after a final moment of hesitation, joined the fray with terrifying effectiveness, his warrior-caste strength crushing chitinous armor and snapping limbs with brutal efficiency. The Zorathi died confused. They died angry. Most importantly, they died without sending a distress signal to their mothership. Elias stood amidst the carnage, his pulse pistol still humming with residual energy. The acrid stench of burnt chitin and spilled hemolymph filled the corridor, mixing with the ozone tang of discharged energy weapons. The bridge-comm crackled to life suddenly. "Captain, we've got a problem." Anya wiped Zorathi ichor from her cheek with the back of one hand, her grin fading as she took in Elias's expression. "We just solved our problem," she pointed out, nudging one of the fallen creatures with her boot. "Not this one," Javi's voice replied through the static. "The coolant system's failing again. And that Zorathi cruiser out there? Turns out it's not alone." The main view screen flickered to life, revealing 3 more jagged warships warping into formation alongside their original pursuer. The new arrival's weapon ports already glowed with building energy, their targeting systems no doubt locking onto the wounded Endurance. Elias met Anya's gaze across the blood-streaked corridor. After a moment, her grin returned, bloody and bright and utterly fearless. "Guess we'll have to die twice," she quipped, already moving toward the armory with purposeful strides. The bridge of the Endurance plunged into horrified silence as the 3 new Zarathi cruisers slid into formation alongside their original pursuer, their jagged hulls blotting out the stars like a swarm of predatory insects. Captain Elias Vance's hands clenched the armrests of his command chair as tactical data scrolled across the flickering main display. Shield integrity at 18%, weapon systems crippled, engines held together by Javi's jury-rigged miracles and sheer stubbornness. The numbers told a story with only one possible ending. Javi's voice crackled over the comm, strained but steady despite the chaos. "Capitan, the coolant system's hemorrhaging faster than a gutted toro. We've got maybe 10 minutes before the engines decide to redecorate engineering and plasma fire." Anya Petrov was already moving toward the tactical station, her boots crunching on broken glass from shattered consoles. The Russian lieutenant moved with predatory grace, despite the blood trickling from a gash above her left eyebrow. "So we take one last shot," she declared, bringing up the weapon schematic. What remained of it? The display flickered ominously, but showed the forward plasma battery still had partial charge. One good hit to their lead ship's engine nacelle will not matter. Priya Carr's voice cut through the tension like a scalpel. The Velnar surgeon stood ramrod straight at the science station. Her exoskeleton flushed a deep, troubled blue. Her 4 hands moved with clinical precision across the scanner displays. "Even if you disabled one cruiser, the others would reduce us to subatomic particles before we could fire again." Tvek's massive carapace creaked as he shifted his weight, mandibles clicking in grim agreement. "We cannot fight. We cannot flee. The situation is not over yet," Elias interrupted. His eyes locked onto the flickering damage report, studying the schematics of Javi's failing coolant system. The design suddenly sparked an idea, terrible, desperate, and quintessentially human. His lips curled into a smile that had no business existing in their current circumstances. Engineering looked like the aftermath of an industrial accident. Steam hissed from fractured conduits, painting the air in ghostly tendrils that swirled around Javi's crouched form as he worked furiously inside an open access panel. The deck plates vibrated ominously underfoot as the Endurance's heart struggled to keep beating. Warning lights painted everything in pulsing crimson, giving the scene a hellish quality. Elias crouched beside his engineer, wincing as his knees protested. "We need to talk about redundancies," he said, raising his voice over the din of protesting machinery. Javi blinked sweat from his eyes, leaving dark streaks through the grime coating his face. "'Kay? Your coolant system," Elias pressed. "It's got backups for its backups, right? Secondary veins? Tertiary fail-safes?" Understanding dawned across Javi's face, followed by that wild grin Elias had learned to both fear and rely upon. "CC, like human circulation. When you get cut, the body shunts blood away from less important areas to protect the brain, the heart." His grease-stained hands gestured wildly as the idea took hold. Elias turned to Priya, who had followed him down to assess the wounded. "Doc, can we do that with the ship? Sacrifice non-critical systems to protect the core?" Priya's vertical pupils dilated as she processed the concept. Her exoskeleton rippled through several shades of blue before settling on what might have been reluctant admiration. "You propose inducing controlled system failures, deliberately shutting down entire ship sections to concentrate remaining power." Anya, who had appeared in the doorway with fresh plasma burns scoring her uniform sleeves, barked a laugh that echoed through engineering. "Turn our own ship into a trauma patient. I love it." Tvek looked ready to protest, his warrior caste instincts rebelling against the concept of voluntary retreat, but stopped abruptly. His massive carapace darkened with realization. The Zorathi, they will expect either surrender or a suicidal charge. Not this. The plan crystallized with terrifying speed. Javi and his engineering team would purge the primary coolant lines entirely, using the last reserves to create a temporary buffer around the engines and single weapons array. Non-essential decks would be vented to space if necessary. The Endurance would play dead more convincingly than any corpse. What followed was 90 seconds of controlled chaos that would haunt the engineers' nightmares for years. Conduits were severed with deliberate precision. Power was rerouted through pathways never meant to handle such loads. Emergency protocols were overridden with a casual disregard for safety that made even Anya raise an eyebrow. Then, silence. The Endurance died. Life support cut out first. Non-essential decks plunging into icy blackness as oxygen was ruthlessly diverted. Artificial gravity failed next, sending tools, debris, and a very startled ensign floating through engineering. Finally, with a shudder that rattled teeth, the entire ship seemed to flatline. External lights winked out. Engine signatures vanished from scanners. Even the emergency beacons fell silent. On the bridge, now lit only by the glow of backup battery displays, Elias watched the Zorathi cruisers hesitate. Their perfect predatory formation stuttered. Weapons remained charged, but didn't fire. The lead ship drifted closer, its movement suddenly cautious, where before they had been assured. "They're scanning us," Anya whispered, her eyes locked on the flickering tactical display that somehow still functioned. "Reading total systems failure, but they're not buying it yet." Javi's voice came through the comm, breathless with manic glee. Primary coolant purged, all power rerouted to engines and the forward plasma battery. "Capitan, we're a fucking heartbeat in a corpse." The lead Zorathi ship edged closer. 500 meters, then 300. Close enough to see the scars along its hull from previous battles. Close enough that Elias could imagine the creatures inside, their compound eyes studying their apparently vanquished prey. At 200 meters, the Endurance screamed back to life. Emergency lights flared crimson as every remaining joule of power surged into the overloaded plasma cannon. The shot tore through the lead cruiser's bridge in a cataclysmic flash of actinic light, sending twisted metal and frozen atmosphere spinning into the void. Secondary explosions rippled along its hull as damaged systems failed catastrophically. "Go!" Elias roared, his voice raw. Javi's rebuilt engines howled in protest, but held together through sheer force of will as the Endurance leapt forward like a startled hare. The remaining Zorathi cruisers scrambled to react, their perfect coordination shattered by the sudden violence. Proximity alarms wailed as the human ship weaved through the suddenly chaotic formation, its path unpredictable as a wounded animal. Anya whooped as she launched their last 2 torpedoes into the confusion, their targeting systems jury-rigged to proximity detonation. "Eat spare parts, you overgrown roaches." Silence. Not the silence of death, but the quiet of exhausted survival. The Endurance drifted in the lee of a gas giant's radiation belt, its systems groaning but intact. The Zorathi had broken off. Whether from damage or sheer disbelief at the human's audacity, no one could say. Priya stood amidst the bridge wreckage, studying her med scanner with something akin to awe. The blue chitin of her forehead wrinkled in what might have been the Velnar equivalent of a frown. "You used your own biological redundancy as a tactical blueprint." Javi collapsed into the ruins of a bridge chair, grinning through the pain of his burns. His hands trembled with adrenaline as he mimed an explosion. "Human engineering, Trarkham. Doctora. When in doubt, redistribute resources. Tvek approached Elias, his massive frame moving with uncharacteristic hesitation. The warrior's mandibles clicked thoughtfully as he studied the human captain. Your species should not survive such gambits. By all logic, you should be extinct 10 times over. Elias smiled wearily, his body aching in places he hadn't known could ache. And yet, Anya slung an arm around Priya's slender shoulders, ignoring the surgeon's stiff discomfort at the contact. Her grin was all sharp edges and triumph. Face it, Doc, we're delightfully over-engineered. As the crew's exhausted laughter echoed through the broken ship, Priya quietly updated her medical logs, her precise Velnar script recording the events with clinical detachment.